Hello everyone. Today we will be discussing the poem A Tiger in a Zoo from the book First Flight. Before we start, let us look at the poet Leslie Norris. So his full name is George Leslie Norris and he was a prize-winning Welsh poet and short story writer. He is considered as most important Welsh writers of the post-war period and his literary works have won many prizes. The theme. In this poem, the poet explains the agony and the helplessness of a caged tiger that lives in a zoo. The poet explains what his life could be if he had been a free animal. The poet has tried to explain about the condition of animals that are caged by human beings for their own fun. So basically, this poem talks about the agony and the plight of all the wild animals who are kept in zoos for entertaining humans. As you can see in the screen, there is the first stanza in the right hand side, and on the left hand side the meanings of the difficult words are given along with the poetic devices. So let us look at the first stanza. He stalks in his vivid stripes, the few steps of his cage, on pads of velvet quiet in his quiet rage. In this stanza, he is referred to the tiger and he is walking in his colorful striking stripes inside the small cage, and his paws are referred to as pads of velvet, and he is walking quietly inside the cage in a state of anger. Now, the figures of speech that have been used in this first stanza are personification, where the tiger is personified and has been used as he. The metaphor, where the paws of the tiger has been referred to as velvet. There is enjambment, where the lines they spill over to the next line without any punctuation. So we can see that the first line has no punctuation and carries forward onto the next sentence. There is an example of oxymoron, where two opposite words have been used, such as quiet and rage. Rage is a word that in itself implies volatility, and quiet and rage do not usually go along with each other, but has been used by the poet and thus giving us an example of oxymoron. The rhyme scheme of this poem is ABCB. In the second stanza, the poet says he should be lurking in shadow, sliding through long grass near the waterhole where plump deer pass. So the tiger in reality should have been in the wild, and he should have been lurking or hide in waiting near the long grass to catch a plump deer and hunt them. So that should have been his ideal life, but he was unfortunately caged and kept in a zoo. The rhyme scheme again here is ABCB. The example of enjambment is in the line second, third, where there is no punctuation and the meaning carries forward to the fourth line. The alliteration, the example of alliteration is in the last line, where plump and pass both have the similar consonant, beginning consonant of pa. In the third stanza, the poet says he should be snarling around houses at the jungle's edge, baring his white fangs, his claws, terrorizing the village. So, apart from hunting deers, he should also have been lurking around the jungle's edge in the boundaries of villages and terrorizing the villagers there. And he should have been showing his white fangs and then clawing and basically hunting whatever animals he would get at his disposal. Sorry. The rhyme scheme again here is ABCB. Enjambment, the first line has no punctuation. Onomatopoeia, the word snarling, it refers to the way the animal makes sound. So this is an example of onomatopoeia. The fourth stanza, but he is locked in a concrete cell, his strength behind bars, stalking the length of his cage, ignoring visitors. In this stanza, the poet is telling us about the current situation of the tiger. In the previous two stanzas, he was telling what should have the tiger been doing ideally in a state of freedom, but unfortunately he was locked inside a concrete cell and his strength was behind bars, and instead of stalking in the wild, in the jungles, and terrorizing the people and the wild animals, he was just walking inside his cage and ignoring the visitors that had come to watch him or to see him inside the bars in a zoo. The rhyme scheme in the stanza is ABCB, and the example of personification is he, where it refers to the tiger. In the fifth stanza, the poet tells us that he hears the last voice at night, the patrolling cars, and stares with his brilliant eyes at the brilliant stars. So this is the concluding stanza, and this one shows how the day in the life of a caged tiger is spent. He is all day long walking in a state of anger inside his cage, and he's ignoring all the visitors that come to see him, and at night he hears the last voice and he hears the patrolling cars, the cars of the guards who come inside the zoo and look after the animals. So that is the last thing that he hears, and throughout the night he stares with his brilliant eyes at the brilliant stars. So again, the example of enjambment in this stanza is the third line, where there is no punctuation, and the rhyme scheme is similar throughout, ABCB. The assignment for this poem is the textbook questions. The first question, you have to find the words that describe the movements and the actions of the tiger in the cage and in the wild. So you make two columns, and in one column you write what the tiger was doing inside the cage, and in the other column you write what he should have been ideally doing in the wild. The Roman 2 of the first question, find the words that describe the two places and arrange them in two columns. So the first column will be a description of the concrete cell, the cage that he is placed inside, the tiger, and in the second column you write about all the possible places that the tiger could have been if he had not been caged inside the zoo. Next question, notice the use of a word repeated in lines such as these: on pads of velvet, quiet in his quiet rage. So what do you think is the effect of the repetition? So the effect that is created by repeating the word quiet here is to build up the ferocity. Okay, it shows how quietly the tiger was beginning to become very ferocious. Although he was quiet, that did not mean that he was not angry. Okay, so it shows the building up of the ferocity of the tiger, and also it can imply that he was yearning to be free. The second question here, the repetition of the word brilliant, and stares with his brilliant eyes at the brilliant stars. This can also show the increase in the intensity of rage and his helpless silence. Okay, and how the tiger, although he was inside the cage, he was looking at the free stars with his eyes, and he was perhaps thinking of the wonderful days that he was outside the cage, and perhaps he was also yearning to be free from that cage someday, and be free again in the wild. So perhaps these are the effects of the repetition that has been shown by repeating the words here. I hope you have found this video helpful, and you have understood this poem. So thank you and have a nice day ahead.